Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Anfield Indexes Medium Matters. Liverpool won a clean sheet, and their title rivals, if you think we're in a title challenge, look like they're imploding a bit, don't they, at the same time? We'll have to see what develops with that one as well. I'm delighted, though, because we're here to talk about everything Liverpool, to be joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. David, how are we this morning after an interesting all-round football weekend for everything Liverpool related?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting yesterday, wasn't it? Sitting back watching those two go at each other and kind of keep lumps out of each other a little bit. So that's always nice. And it's always a much better feeling as well when you've got the 3 points in the bag and you know that you've done your job in the weekend. I thought Liverpool did that through a decent performance. And so, yeah, I think a good weekend for Liverpool all in.
We'll get into the Bournemouth game straight away, because I was going to ask you about performance, because you can look at the sort of the headline stats and think 3-0, clean sheet, goals, etc., all perfect. But in terms of the performance, Bournemouth certainly didn't just sit back, did they? They didn't park the bus or anything like that in this one at all.
Yeah, they had a real go, to be fair to them. I kind of thought it would have been easier for them to maybe sit in and make things difficult and look at what Nottingham Forest had kind of succeeded in and try and replicate that. Obviously, they've got a bit of a clear philosophy, haven't they, under Iraola, and they probably want to stick to that. I kind of thought they would compromise a little, and being given encouragement by Forest, but none of that really, and they had a real go. But then, of course, if you do try that, then you might get a few shots away, you might get into some promising positions, but ultimately they got beat 3-0, and I thought quite convincingly as well. I thought Liverpool were very good. I mean, there's been some talk in the aftermath of the match, and maybe people feeling that Liverpool weren't perfect defensively, or that Bournemouth really threatened them, and I agree that that's true in moments, but the majority of those moments came when the game was 3-0. And we've seen that before already this season against Manchester United. If you're 3-0 up, I'm sure Slot will want to manage that section of the game a little bit better, a little bit more rest possession, but it's so hard to stay switched on. And I think the reality is when it was a contest, Liverpool were well in charge of it, really. But the moments the game was in any doubt, Liverpool were massively on top, and then blow them away with three quick goals, and that basically decided the game. So, I think, and still, regardless of all that, Liverpool still come out quite comfortably on top of shots, expected goals. Obviously, they get another clean sheet, having give up, like I say, the best opportunities Bournemouth get are kind of late in the game when it's already decided. So I thought a really comprehensive performance. And yet again, you've got to factor this in as part of the response to the Forest result. So not just what they did in Milan, but could they get back to winning ways in the league? And I thought, personally, very, very convincing. A really good performance. Obviously, always things you can improve, and I'm sure the manager will be looking at that. But I thought overall another really encouraging showing, and particularly after the defeat at Nottingham Forest, I think the response has been absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, no doubt, Sid. In a weird way, I was almost more nervous about this one than I was about Milan. How would we respond? But it was emphatic in the end, and it could have been more if we'd taken even more chances that we had. So plenty of positives there. And this one I like asking more than I had to ask after Forest, where after Forest I had to say who had pass marks. This one, who was man of the match for you? Because there's a fair few could come into the mix here.
Yeah, tough one, really. I mean, you obviously look at Luis Diaz with the 2 goals, and that's absolutely crucial. But I think it's reflective of the fact that it was a good overall performance. It wasn't just this flurry of 3 goals and that kind of decided the game. I thought Liverpool were good in all aspects of the play, and that makes it kind of difficult to pick out a man of the match. I mean, you definitely put Diaz up there, absolutely. But I thought both of the holding midfielders, McAllister and Gravenberch, were absolutely outstanding. I mean, I'm almost getting sick of talking about Gravenberch because it's just... But every game, I think he's just been outstanding so far. I mean, just every aspect of that role, he's performing to the highest level at the moment. And, you kind of overpraise him sometimes. I feel like I am, maybe because it's so surprising and it's not what we expected from him this season. And for that reason, maybe McAllister's going under the radar a little bit. But those two as a pairing are just so good together, bring such balance. Really, really good in possession, really incisive in possession. Gravenberch can dribble it a little bit more, but McAllister's maybe the better passer through the lines. And I mean, some of his passes to Mo Salah were just outrageous. But both bring that defensive steel and real sort of, just to bring a bit of sense and control to that central area. So absolutely loved both of them, both sides of the game. I mean, they showed up really well in the numbers as well. I think it was it's top of my head this. So I think Gravenberch wins 7 duels out of maybe, was it 13 or something, and McAllister 4 out of 5 tackles. So they're doing all that aspect that you want from those, but then obviously the other football elements in terms of the little turns in space and just really, really good to watch, and big part of why Liverpool are controlling games consistently this season. And I thought they both did a great job. But so I think for me, Diaz probably is the man of the match, but I think those two were very close second, and there's quite a few honourable mentions you could put in there as well, because I just thought it was a really, really good Liverpool performance.
No doubt. And I was going to ask you, talking about honourable mentions, Ibu Konate, again, absolutely immense on Saturday. 3 games in a week. If we talked about last season, Ibu Konate playing 3 games in a week, we probably bet him when one of his legs would have fallen off, in all honesty, or when's he going to get injury. I mean, is that just indicative of the full turnaround from last season compared to now, that we're almost not too surprised he's gone 3 in a week?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be talking about it, to be honest. But yeah, it's good. And again, we've already, it's really, really early days. I mean, I don't want to get carried away in any aspect of sort of assessing what's going on in the slot. And we really probably should be quite careful about that. So, but, you do think, and it was part of the reason they were brought in, this team, is that, there was going to be improvements on the medical front and player availability. The hope was that was going to be better with a kind of reconstructed medical team. They've changed how things are structured there behind the scenes, and then added people like Ruben Peters to the mix. The hope was that player availability would go up, and of all the players that you would talk about who you would need improvements there, I think Konate was up there probably with Jota as the top 2 that you would like to see on the pitch more frequently this season. Now, of course, maybe there's no difference. Maybe he's played 3 games in a week there, and in a week's time he pulls up with a muscle injury. We'll have to see. That is the real test. But I don't even think, as you say, last season Liverpool would have even risked it. They probably would have managed Konate's games, two in a week maximum, and then you will probably see a little bit of Quansah. So the fact that they feel confident enough to do that, I think, is very, very encouraging. We will have to see. The true test is to come, but it is really, really good, because when he does get consistent run of games, you see how good again he is, because he had a poor finish to last season, really, and obviously getting pushed out of the team, but then not looking great when he played. And it was easy in that period to forget how good he is, and that is on both sides of the ball, by the way, because the ball over the top to set the first one up just sums up that he's a better footballer than he gets credit for, even if he's not quite Quansah and Van Dijk maybe, but he's still very, very good. And so yeah, absolutely great to see him being able to play consistently, to get his form going. And he has just been brilliant since the start of the season, hasn't he? So long may it continue.
Yeah, we all held our breath when he was in that collision late on, but he got up and he was fine. And we saw it again, like you mentioned, that old Konate pitching wedge. It's that ball over the top. He's got it in his locker that way. I mean, he's blocking goals. He's creating goals even now. And there was that bit where he just 2 blocks late on and gives a roar to the crowd as well, didn't he? So he just seems all in it. And again, he was brilliant on Saturday. We're not understating that at all, are we?
No, and one point to mention about Konate as well is that he's into the last 2 years of his contract here. That's gone massively under the radar at the moment. But I think, the way he's performing at the moment, Liverpool, as much as they've got to sort out the lads who've got 1 year left, they could probably do with getting a move on with Konate as well, because, I mean, he's still very young. He's getting better. That availability, if they can solve that issue, then that looks, he looks like he's got absolutely everything then, doesn't he? So, fingers crossed that's something that they can sort out soon, because, as you say, when he's performing this well on both sides of the ball, then there's who's better than him in the Premier League. You'd probably only say the man who's alongside him, and there's no higher praise than that.
Yeah, no 2 ways about it. I mean, yeah, if he carries on, we'll ignore what Gary Neville says about the Arsenal duo being the best. And
also, and on that point, actually, I mean, in terms of not having 6 players in front of you as well, making it really difficult for the opposition to play through. I mean, the reason that Konate is so good is that, he doesn't need that protection. He can get dragged out into 1v1s. He can be in areas where you wouldn't typically want your centre halves to go. I think Gabriel and Saliba are absolutely fantastic, but they've got an awful lot of protection in comparison. And so, yeah, I don't quite buy that logic that they're the best two either, to be honest.
No, just centre-back's dream playing in that formation. So, yeah, let's just hope they keep it up. And you mentioned a duo there. It was interesting because when we look at the midfield three, and we should talk about a midfield three, it was probably, you alluded to it, McAllister and Gravenberch that probably stole the show a little bit over Szoboszlai, didn't they?
Yeah, but also, and I think they generally have this season as well. I just think they just look such a really nice balanced pairing that it just works. Everything there that you see, I really like a lot about it. But I think we should also give credit to Szoboszlai. I think he's a little bit untidy in the final third, and I think it's the one thing that you'd need to iron out from what he's done at the start of the season. It was a little bit costly against Nottingham Forest, although he wasn't the only one who played poorly in the final third there, so we really shouldn't single him out. But there is that little bit of sloppiness in his game when he gets into some good positions. But I think the fact he's getting into those positions, he deserves credit for that. He's playing a big role in build-up as well because there is rotation there in that midfield. He isn't just standing there waiting for the ball. He has to be the man who comes deep a lot of the time. So he is playing a big role in that. And the defensive work he gets to is phenomenal in terms of plugging gaps. He's obviously much quicker than McAllister and quicker than Gravenberch as well. So there are times when if they get caught slightly out of position and the ball goes past them, then he is the one who gets back and gets in and covers off because his pace is unbelievable. So I just think if he just sorts out that little bit of a little bit more tidy in the final third and in attacking areas, then we really are going to be talking about his performances in top class terms really, because it is all kind of there for him, but it's just that sloppiness that's holding him back a little bit. But he is a very, very important part of that midfield three, and that's going to be true until we get Harvey Elliott back as well. In terms of that competition might have been interesting in this period if Szoboszlai's form had dipped, but he's vital for now. And then when Elliott comes back, obviously that competition starts again, and that'll be an interesting one. But he's very, very important, even if he's not playing at his absolute maximum.
Yeah, no doubt. Interesting, he was taken off after 60 in this one, so a bit of a rest, maybe Slot thought as well. We'll see if he plays anything against West Ham. And I mean, the other two, as you mentioned, Gravenberch was a monster again. He just won tackles, broke it up, intercepted, strode forward so often. And yet, probably the memorable moment for the match, there's that half-volley pass, isn't there, from McAllister where he plays through Salah. I mean, you hang that in the Louvre, the photos of that type of thing. I mean, if you had to sort of pick, who did you think was, and this tie, I know it's nip and tuck, who do you think was better on the day in this one?
I think maybe McAllister. I think just because of the quality of some of the passing, I think we've seen Gravenberch in other games maybe offer just slightly more than he did in that game going forward. But I mean, it was really, really tight how good they were, and yeah. I mean, the thing is with Gravenberch, it's that surprise factor as well, and maybe adds to it a little bit, as I say, in terms of you just didn't see this coming from him. And I think what's interesting about that as well to me is that obviously I don't think he could have been this good as the sole pivot in a Jurgen Klopp system. I think he would have been too exposed. I think it really does help him to be in a two. But what's mad about that is that Bayern have been playing with the two. Told him, despite knowing that he could do this in a two, or maybe not knowing that he could do it because the coach couldn't see it or whatever. But that to me is madness. I get Jurgen Klopp not using him there, but the fact that Bayern didn't and didn't think he was good enough for them is, well, they must. Yeah, well, I know they've had a really, really good start to the season, but I still think that's something that they will live to regret because he's still young. He can keep getting better, and he's just been phenomenal so far this season.
Yeah, they were both absolutely brilliant. They are absolutely crucial as well. And speaking of crucial as well, I mean, Luis Diaz last season got 8 Premier League goals in total. He's now on 5 already. And it's a brilliant, I mean, they're 2 brilliant goals in different ways. I mean, so distinct. Which one was the favourite for you out of both of them?
Definitely the second, because I think he shows composure around the first, but the keeper makes it a little easy for him. But he's still great to touch and a good finish. But I think the second one, these are the goals you want to see him add. He's on that left side there. He finishes it through the keeper's legs on his weaker foot. That's real composed finishing. And I think that is the one thing to his game that you wanted to add in really is that composure in the box. Not just trying to always go for the curler to the far post, having a bit of variety in his finish, and not panicking when the keeper runs him down and just trying to blast it. And I just loved the way he passed it in, and it took me by surprise when the ball hit the back of the net, because I think it's a finish we haven't seen loads of from him. So again, just speaks to how confident he is at the moment, but also, is the work of the coaches paying off? Are these individual sessions that he's doing, are they helpful? You'd like to think so, because that means that you can keep this going and it isn't just a little purple patch that he's in. But yeah, absolutely love that finish. And again, like you say, 5 for the season and only 8 last season, that suggests he's going to score an awful lot more. And I don't suspect that he's going to keep scoring at this rate. Maybe it'll slow down a little bit. But if he can get into sort of, well, I mean, you've already got this many now. 15's definitely a target, and if you Premier League goals and everybody else gets what you would kind of expect them to get, that's a huge boost, and can be the difference between being in the title challenge or not. So really, really encouraged by his performances at the moment, and that second finish in particular.
I mean, it is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. It's just so different, because we talked at length last season of, especially, what are his strengths? Away from home, gets you up the pitch, can go on some wild dribbles at times, but works so hard. This season, the dribbling's still there, but it's not wild. It seems to be very controlled in certain areas. And like you said, the finishing last season, that one where he bends it over against City, that kind of signposted his finishing last season. But now, like you say, we're seeing controlled, clinical. I mean, is it just a multitude of things, or is there one thing you're really pinning on Luis Diaz changing this campaign?
Well, what I think is massively helping him is that, one of the big differences I've noticed between, and I don't want to, when I make these comparisons with Klopp, I don't want to seem ever like I'm doing Klopp down, but I think the peak of his Liverpool was clearly maybe a couple of years before his last couple of teams. I think, there was a little bit of decline, even if the still winning trophies and still doing well in that aspect, last season and being in the title challenge, which is amazing. But it wasn't a peak Klopp Liverpool team. And one of the things I think they really struggled with for me, and one of the real differences we're noticing already, is being able to comfortably and without risking the ball, progress it through the pitch from back to front. This is one of the big differences. Slot is so big on sort of making the extra man in the middle and trying to find those little triangles to get you out and doing like little bounce passes in. So what you always see quite a lot of is someone either dropping off from the front line, or a midfielder is turning their back on the opposition goal and being there to sort of bounce the ball off, so that a teammate somewhere can take it then with the facing goal. And they've done quite a lot of that. So this is the way they're working the way up the pitch and finding it easy. And then once you're in the final third, then it's all about how good are you sort of attacking players? Can you create that moment of creativity, the little sort of patterns of play that you work through? But I think what's great then is, so you're not then having to say, and this is one of the things Liverpool were having to do like last season, is say, right, just fire the ball into Diaz, see how far he can get us up the pitch. Can he get us to the final third? What's happening instead is he's kind of when he gets the ball, it's in the final third already, because the midfielders and the defenders have progressed it. And then it's like, okay, well, if you can use your dribbling skills now, get us into the box, take us to that next step, or, you push a defender back and push the ball off and create space and create a little bit of havoc, rather than, can you get us 60 yards up the pitch and then try and score the goal? It's madness, really, probably, to expect that. So what you're doing is you're taking that skill he's got, that real brilliant dribbling skill, and you're applying it to a more useful area of the pitch and in more useful scenarios. And I just think, and you're not taking as much out of Diaz. I mean, his work rate's still there, but just that, he's not having to drag the ball up the pitch for Liverpool. So I think that's really, really helping him. I think there's more composure and more sort of legs there when he gets the ball in the box. He's got that ability to use his dribbling there, but also then he can concentrate on making movements that are more striker-like at times as well. So, and then, as I say, the composure's there and his finishing. So I think that's a real early difference that we're seeing. And like I say, whether that can be sustained or whether that holds, we will have to see. But I do think that's a marked difference that we're seeing between Klopp football or latter part of Klopp football and Slot now. And I think Diaz is a real beneficiary of that.
Yeah, even for the second, he's almost just waiting for the ball from Trent in the box at the right time to control and finish. And like you said, there was a good few times in that game, especially, where he got it and he beat the man and went to the touchline, didn't he? And probably should have cut it back a few times, but it's in dangerous areas rather than having to perform heroics to get there in the first place. And his name and his chant ran round the ground a few times. And so did Darwin Núñez's. I think a lot of people were surprised he was in this starting lineup. Maybe not everyone, who knows, but his name rang round a fair few times at the weekend. What did you make of his overall performance?
Yeah, I thought good. I mean, to be fair, the fact his name was getting sung is probably not that indicative of much, to be honest, because it used to be even when he was missing chances left, right, and centre. But I thought, it's an interesting one for him to be thrown into, because I thought, we're up to the sixth game of the season there, and he's only just getting his first start.
Yeah.
I think, particularly kind of surprised he didn't get a start after the international break, having not been away. It made you kind of think, well, as a manager, not massively keen on what he's seeing in training. And it seemed like there was a really obvious point to giving him his first game, which would have been on the Wednesday coming, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So it would have been easy for Slot to maybe not make that call. But it felt like a real sign of kind of trust in him, and that he felt he was ready to come into the team. And I thought he really rewarded that faith. I thought it was a good performance. I mean, obviously the goal is fabulous, and we do know he can score brilliant goals from time to time. That's not the question really, is it? But I liked a lot of his all-round play. I mean, he's great in the build-up to his own goal. For starters, the little flick on, it's a little bit of direction, and it puts him straight into Salah's path, and then continues his run. But there's a few moments in build-up I really liked. Some good touches, laying it off and bringing others into play. And obviously his movement is good when he can stay on side, and we saw a lot of that. And also a few pressing situations, one really memorable one where he nicks the ball and wins that. So I think the manager will have really liked it. And I think what's kind of interesting is that, Jota has obviously started the season as the preferred man up top, but he scored a couple of goals and done okay, but I don't think he's been perfect either. So I think, even though Núñez wasn't absolutely stunning performance, I thought he was very good in a lot of aspects. And because Jota's not absolutely nailed it down and been very quiet in the last couple of games up to this one, maybe there's a little bit of competition there. Maybe there's an interesting battle ahead, and maybe Núñez has done enough in that game to put himself in. We will have to see. But I think that battle is more interesting than me maybe would have thought after maybe the first 3 games of the season. So, Núñez has done himself kind of no harm really of pushing in his chances of pushing into the team there. So yeah, a kind of interesting one to take a look at going forward.
Yeah, because it was interesting. It was in Slot's embargo, wasn't it? They mentioned about the 2 times that Jota can come deeper and do more for the team. Darwin doesn't really have that, and he responds with going deep, linking, breaking play, or even winning tackles a couple of times on the edge of our area. Like a real all-round performance. You think that would have gone in his favour. We'll have to see, like you said, how that develops. And I want to sort of move into a bit of off-the-field stuff. And there's obviously been comments from Slot, Trent, and various things we'll get into. Just because I mentioned Slot there, so I'll come to that first. The other part of his embargo was where he was asked about, this question maybe will keep coming up for a while, all the way through to January, Zubimendi and Gravenberch, who we've mentioned before. I mean, he was quite distinct in the comments that come out, as you know, David, where he says, Zubimendi's decided to stay at Real Sociedad, so it's nothing for us anymore. Very much we've got Ryan Gravenberch. When you read those comments, were you thinking, is that done, or are you thinking this could still be possibly revisited?
Yeah, I don't think he was in any way sort of completely shutting it off. That would have been quite easy for him to do, and I don't think he did that. And I still think you can see signs of why Liverpool still might need something there anyway in midfield. I mean, obviously the midfield 3 I think is playing brilliantly, and I've spoken about them. They are the foundation of a lot of what Liverpool are doing well at the moment. But depth wise, there's a couple of questions there that I don't think were there in the summer. I mean, remember we speaking over the summer in terms of if Liverpool were to add a midfielder, how would they do it in terms of the numbers? But the big thing that's changed is obviously the manager's come in and said Bajcetic is not ready, so immediately he was sent out on loan and is now not an option. So you lost one there. He clearly thinks Morton is maybe not an option as well, which again he could have come in as a surprise one, but isn't. And he really doesn't fancy Endo. So and again that was clear. But I remember reporting that since pre-season. That's not a big surprise, but I mean, the extent to which he doesn't quite fancy him has been really, I think, hammered home in these first few games. So suddenly from thinking you might have too many midfielders in the summer to now, it's like, well, actually, a few of those don't count, and therefore you are a little thin there. If Gravenberch gets a knock, even for 2 or 3 weeks, it's suddenly starts to look a little bit different, doesn't it? A little bit more difficult. So I don't think Slot in any way was kind of really firm on that, or to make it seem like it's not a possibility at all. I mean, the big question now is what will, do Liverpool think that's a possibility going forward with that particular player?
Yeah.
Is it one they'd have to wait till next summer? Does he sign a new contract? All these questions are up in the air. But I don't think we got anything definitive from Slot on that. And I personally still think there's a need there in midfield.
I was going to ask you, because you mentioned those players. Curtis Jones should say had a really good cameo, so that was positive as a midfield option. That's important to say. Endo doesn't even make the bench. There's 3 attackers on there. Tyler Morton, for all he did well last season at Hull and for International, plays an under-21 game at the weekend as well, which is maybe quite telling where Slot kind of sees him in a pecking order, if you want to phrase it that way. With that sort of backdrop, and like you say, the same players sort of starting every game in midfield, do you think they will be looking at that position or that area of the pitch in January, even if it isn't Zubimendi? Do you think you might be thinking, I want another one here?
I think so. But the big thing is that Liverpool, they're so adamant, aren't they, about they'll only do the right one, and
yeah,
January's a difficult market and all these sorts of things. So I'm not going into this saying I absolutely expect Liverpool to sign in January. If anything, I would say right now I'd probably lean on the side that they won't, because they will say that who they want is not available or whatever, and all these various factors that come into it, and they don't want to do bad deals, so they probably won't do a deal at all. Yeah. So I always fall on that side, but they have done business in January previously. It clearly is an area that they feel needs to be strengthened. You cannot get away from that. So I'm sure they will. I can guarantee they will be looking, but whether that turns into anything, we'll have to see. But I would hope so, because I just think it's one area where I think there's real potential to. He doesn't necessarily have to kind of move the dial in a first team senses in this Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai.
Yeah,
the balance there. Love the way it's looking. But having a little bit more depth there and another really high quality option who the manager has big faith in, I think would really kind of help boost this squad and would make it a lot stronger. So I really do hope that they can line someone up, but whether they do, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's right. Just an option he has another faith in, because I think it's starting to tell its own story with who's not in the squad as to who he fancies and not a little bit. So we'll have to see. And I mean, it wasn't even on the docket until this came out about 5 o'clock yesterday, about half time during the City Arsenal. Trent Comments, David. I mean, I know you've seen them. I mean, it's not an interview, but they're quite lengthy comments. Obviously, they're coming in the backdrop of the contract situation, the headlines that everyone's talking about. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen them, but there's themes there where he talks about how he's asked Slot to be critical of him, that he sees himself as an elite player and his target being to win trophies, the captaincy being a big target of his at the same time, and not wanting to make the contract negotiations public, which maybe is interesting when obviously there's always going to happen with these comments as well. What did you make when you read the full sort of comments? Because there's quite a lot to this, isn't there?
Yes, to be honest, I didn't think the stuff on the contract was surprising or felt new in any way. I mean, it was interesting that he stopped. He clearly wanted to talk about it, and he never stops in the mix zone from my experience. I mean, I actually missed this one because I was up in the stands still doing some work, and so I wasn't down there for this one, so I can't personally vouch for how the delivery was. But just from reading them, it's interesting, but I don't feel like we learned anything massively new. Again, I think he's kind of in the similar camp with Van Dijk and Salah. I think there's a suggestion there he would like to stay as long as it's a competitive Liverpool team, but I think we've known that for a while. Talking about wanting to be captain again, which is very encouraging from Liverpool's perspective, and we know there's a desperation on Liverpool's side to get this one done. So you'd like him to speed things up a little bit, and that's kind of, an interesting aspect. And maybe, again, that's why he's come out and actually spoken for once, which doesn't happen very frequently. So, maybe that's what we kind of learned from it. But I thought with the contract situation, like I said, I didn't think there was anything massively new in there. I actually thought the stuff he spoke about his defending was possibly more insightful, actually, and kind of interesting. But yeah, the contract stuff, it just is, as you were, really, isn't it?
Is it, like you said, the stuff that won't grab the headlines maybe might be the most interesting? It was the bit where he said he's asked Slot to be critical. They will really pick up on his play. They'll really focus on his defending side as well. So maybe that's a bit of an improvement there as well, which we've seen this season. The 2 points that I really wanted to sort of ask you about are, I mean, we've talked about it. We said You want this to side. It is starting to drag on. We're not panicked yet. You probably know I'm going to ask you this. At which point, because Jan's that part where you can sign the pre-contract, at which point does it start to sort of move into, okay, we're starting to get a little bit worried about this for you?
Yeah, I think January probably is the point. I think because the real threat here is Real Madrid, and obviously they are a foreign club. I don't think he's going to go to another English club. But because January is the point at which they can, freely approach him and start putting all sorts of numbers on the table. I mean, to be honest, it's probably naive of us to say that in the sense that they probably would just be doing this anyway. Tapping up is rife, isn't it, if we're honest? But I think, the fact that he could do it officially and really put on a public charm offensive, that's kind of concerning. So it's still a little while away yet. We've still got a bit of time to go to that. But I do think January kind of feels significant. And you really, with Trent in particular, that is the one you'd like to see them wrap up ASAP. He's so important, and it's the biggest contract. It's coming into his peak years. Really, really do want to see that one sorted. So, and because January's coming around, if you can get it done, if you can get a sort of resolution on all three by then, that would be quite nice, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's growing quick, and it will be in October before you can blink, realistically. I mean, the only other one I wanted to ask, because he did mention the captaincy specifically, and he said, that's something that's always been my aim, always been my goal, but I'm not in control of that. So people will look at those comments, they'll think back to maybe even going back in history that when Steven Gerrard got the captaincy, he had to get taken off Sammy Hupia, didn't he? And they managed that. Do you think there's any possibility, because you said Trent's the most important one, they might counter a situation where Van Dijk is maybe spoken to about the captaincy, like, listen, this will get Trent to stay, or do you think that's just he's not in that leadership role yet?
Well, the interesting thing is that Van Dijk's in exactly the same contract situation. Yeah. So, I mean, it could work itself out if he doesn't sign one. I mean, he's already the vice captain, isn't he? So, there's a lot riding on sort of how that one plays out, really. So, it's possibly not even something to think about at the moment. I mean, maybe they get to in the contract talks and they get with Van Dijk and say, okay, a couple of years then, and Trent is maybe happy to wait those couple of years before he gets it, because he surely is guaranteed to at least succeed, Van Dijk. And the reality is as well, if Van Dijk does a couple more years or whatever, is he going to be in for every game? Is it probably going to be Trent as the de facto captain anyway, and then he does officially get the role then? So I think that's, there's so many factors to that and so many sort of balls in the air, really, that I don't think it's going to be a huge say on whether he signs a new deal or not. I think for Trent, made quite clear, he just wants to be part of competitive teams, doesn't he, that wins trophies, and making sure that is the case at Liverpool. So I think guarantees over that will be something he's thinking about more rather than the captaincy itself, because it just feels that regardless of what happens, that one will work itself out eventually.
Yeah, and we've even managed to go with pretty much a show so far where we've not mentioned both Salah's contracts at the same time. So there we go. And player-wise, I've been talking to big players. It's been good injury-wise so far. And then Slot tells us on Friday that Alisson has missed the game. Now, I suppose it'd be good to get the latest on this, because the way he spoke, he said, if he trains with us today, going back a bit, then he should be fine. Is that indicating, from your understanding, it's not too bad a one for Alisson, as we understand?
Yeah, so everyone I spoke to about this made it seem like it wasn't too bad. I mean, I don't realistically ever think he was in contention to Bournemouth. For Bournemouth, I think there was an acceptance there that was looking unlikely. But obviously, West Ham in midweek, that seems like maybe he could be at least back in the squad. And if not that, obviously they're not going to try and rush him for this one. If they're going to have him ready for the weekend, Kelleher would have come in for this one anyway. You've got a League Cup game there, or between him and Yaros, and they can look after that, and then have him ready for the weekend. So I think there's an expectation there we'll be back for that, and that's certainly the hope, unless he's had any sort of setback between Slot speaking and now.
Yeah, I mean, he's the best in the world. He's an unbelievable keeper. He does miss quite a few games, Alisson, though, doesn't he? As history has told us, recent history, especially the last few seasons. Do you think as well, it's maybe why it's after the event, but when you start to think about this and last season, it does make Mamardashvili more understandable, doesn't it, as a move?
Yeah, because, I mean, like we said, the contract situation with Alisson's interesting. He's still got quite a while left, but I think, it's very rare, isn't it, that you get fewer injuries as you get older. And he is, for a goalkeeper, fairly prone to them. I mean, they're not generally lengthy layoffs, are they? I mean, he's had a couple of bad ones, but nothing really. But it's these persistent kind of muscle issues. So again, if that becomes more persistent, if that happens more frequently, you've got to be ready for that. And as you say with Mamardashvili, you'd hope he has a slightly better injury record, and that's an area that we're looking at. So, I mean, it's not too bad for Liverpool because he got Kelleher, that I thought was really, really good again at the weekend. But yeah, in the long term, obviously, this is going to be a factor with Alisson. He's got that interest from Saudi, and it probably, if he does start to pick these up more regularly, then it does make that decision to sell at some point a little bit easier, I think, for Liverpool, particularly because they've now got this backup, an option to come in Mamardashvili, who they already really, really believe in. So, yeah, I think that is, it's a small factor in it, I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, fingers crossed he is back for Wolves, isn't it? A week from Saturday, we'll have to see. And I suppose I wanted to look at a positive because I know I was jumping back to the last pod. We talked about how it was Milan and Bournemouth, and there was the different challenges of Milan in the San Siro. They'll probably will come out, but that'll be a challenge in itself. It's back in the Champions League. Bournemouth, from the element of would they go a bit like Forest behind the ball? Would Liverpool got over that? Is this a blip or is it a concern about teams that play the low block? They've answered the questions this week in emphatic style, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly because in Milan as well, going behind early doors when confidence was already maybe been knocked a little bit by the Nottingham Forest game. So the way they came back in that was really, really impressive. And then going to Bournemouth and kind of just sweep them aside. I thought underlying numbers from both games are really, really encouraging. So, not just lucky victories or anything like that. Liverpool fully deserved them. So it does just look like a blip now. It looks like, and even in that Forest game, we spoke about it after, it was just that the attacking was so bad. They looked really, really poor in the final third, but defensively, in the way they controlled the game, was generally actually pretty good. We spoke about that in the pod after. That's why I wasn't too discouraged. It was kind of like, well, if you don't have a day like this in attack again this season, or they keep them as rare as possible, the building blocks of a very good team are there. So the fact is that they've looked sharp again in attack. That has happened consistently, despite some changes as well in certain positions, which is really encouraging. And kept all that solidity and all that control in midfield as well. So it looks like at the moment a little bit of a one-off, but of course, a team at this level, you've got to keep consistently showing that. And so, you can't just be celebrating off the back of a good week now. Got to keep winning to the international break, and that's the aim.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a great week. We can't complain at all. And the only other thing I wanted to ask you about off the field is, I mean, I can't believe how much during pre-season we talked about LinkedIn and job adverts realistically, but the set-piece coach, has Aaron Briggs sort of got this taken down off LinkedIn with how he's doing, would you say, recently?
Yeah, so wrote a piece on Substack about this, that, in the aftermath of the Milan game, that basically, Liverpool have got to a position now where their feeling is that unless an absolutely outstanding candidate was to come up, that they are kind of comfortable with what they've got in terms of the set-piece coach, which at the moment is Aaron Briggs. Real big faith behind the scenes in him and the work he's doing. And of course, the analysts play a really big role in it as well, identifying weaknesses you can attack in defending set pieces from the opposition, and also making sure Liverpool are good at defending set pieces. And I think actually we saw against Bournemouth another side of Liverpool's strength in that. I thought they were very good at defending set pieces against Bournemouth. I mean, I think Bournemouth had 9 corners, so it's quite a lot for a visiting team to get at Anfield, but Liverpool looked really, really convincing from them. I know there's that late one that hits the bar, but I watched it back today and it almost just kind of seems to hit the Bournemouth player on the head. Yeah, and then obviously a deflection nearly takes it in the end. But that, even that was a little bit of an element of fortune. And generally, Liverpool have been quite solid in defending set pieces so far this season. And, trying to find a little edge in that detail. You see Arsenal so far again this season looking very threatening from them and defending them well as well. Can make a big difference. And so Liverpool seems to think that Aaron Briggs is, he can give them that edge, and he's doing a really, really good job in that. So, yeah, for the moment, that search has been postponed, which is, it's an interesting one given they did publicly advertise for it.
Yeah, but to be fair, Konate and Van Dijk, like you say, scoring Milan and pretty resolute from them at the same time as well. So it looks like it's working well. It's definitely something that's different from last season as well. And What maybe, or I don't even know with this myself. West Ham, Carabao, Wednesday night. I mean, Arne Slot seems to like his 9 o'clock press conference, doesn't he? Because that's when he's going
Yeah,
tomorrow.
it's a nightmare.
It's an early start every time. He seems to like it, but yeah, nightmare from the journos from that one. I suppose I'll take this on in two parts. West Ham, Carabao, and maybe Carabao's the big factor. Who do you feel might come in for this one? Maybe that's the first question to ask.
Honestly, I mean, personally, I think there's a real strong case to make. I would do a YouTube video about this later, actually, to team selection. But I think there's a really strong case to almost rotate in every position. And that's not just purely disrespect the Carabao Cup or anything like that. But I think there's been minimal rotation in the game so far. We haven't seen an awful lot of it. So you really do want to protect your players. But also, there's a lot of people knocking on the door. I mean, there's so many players that need a game and probably deserve one at this point. I mean, you think, for example, I expect Kelleher to stay in goal for as we say, with but then, you start to move forward through the team. Connor Bradley needs a game and deserves one. Jarell Quansah deserves one and needs one. In midfield, he's not rotated that three at all. So there's games to Curtis Jones there. I know he doesn't really seem to love Endo, but I think, surely you can give him a game in this, especially with it being at Anfield.
Yeah.
There's a case to make for quite heavy rotation. And obviously the forward line, anyone who's not really started that frequently should be ready to come in. So I could make a case for maybe 9 or 10 changes, to be honest. And I think it should be that, to being real. I think I would like to see that. And I still think you can put a very, very strong Liverpool team out if you did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because as much as people talk weakened team, you could still have like Chiesa, Jota, and Gakpo up front, couldn't you? I mean, that's the incredible forward line that most clubs sort of in the league would take in a heartbeat, I suppose.
And Bradley and Quansah, for example, they finished last season in the team for Liverpool, or certainly when Trent was out. So, that's a really strong part of your defence. And obviously, Kelleher in goal and what else you've got is. There's some really, really good players not getting a game, so it's I think they could. I think they could put a really strong team out despite a load of changes. Yeah,
and there's no extra time, is it? It will go straight to penalties if it's square at full time as well, so that's an advantage. I mean, I suppose on the other side, because I'm the same, I'd love to see wholesale changes. I get the feeling it might not be quite what you and I want, and people on the bench. Is there anyone that you would like to see right now where you would just go? Give them the night off completely. You wouldn't even have them in the squad, and an option is the players, just because you're right, there hasn't been much rotation. There's been players who played a lot of minutes. Is there any you would say leave at home right this second?
I'd say that basically all three midfielders for me have got through an awful lot, and I kind of I say, I don't think Slot feels he's got great depth there because I don't think he trusts a few of his options. So I'd kind of like to see all three of those really. If they have to be used, they're used at the bare minimum. I mean, Szoboszlai in particular, because you don't have a like-for-like replacement now. Harvey Elliott's injured at the moment. So, that for me, I think that's the area I'm most concerned. I wouldn't like to see a lot of minutes put into any of those three, really. And it's an area where there's not loads of options for him that he trusts. But so that's going to be interesting, actually, what he kind of does there. But, that's the area of concern for me.
Yeah, it's tough because Jones, Endo, Morton, even Trey Ione could come in. That could be an option. But then even you look and say, well, you could play 4 forwards because Chiesa, Jota, Gakpo, and even Nunes are probably looking for minutes after what happened at the weekend. It's such a tough one. There's nothing to base how Arne Slot sees the Carabao Cup, and he's never played in it either. So we've got absolutely nothing to base it on. It will be fascinating come Wednesday. That's everything Liverpool based. As ever, ladies and gents, we'll talk everything in wider football. I mean, there's a couple of things, and we're not going to get away without talking about refs and VAR and different things, as you know, David, to start with. I mean, we'll go for the easy one first of all. Crystal Palace United. I'm sure you've seen it. Lisandro Martinez, the double-footed jump, a yellow card. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think he's very, very lucky, to be honest. I mean, McAllister does a similar-ish thing from time to time. You'll see, and he's basically trying to put 2 legs in front of the ball when the player's trying to pass it. But I don't think you can jump that high. I think that adds an element. McAllister is just literally a little shuffle in front to close his legs and get in front of the ball. that is almost a lunge, isn't it, really? And I think he's very, very, very fortunate that he didn't get, didn't get sent to the screen and have a look and maybe recommend for a red card there, because, yeah, I think you could have been playing it under a different ref, and probably 9 out of 10 of them would have get the red there, or VAR would have recommended it. So, yeah, I think he's a really lucky boy on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, Arsenal fans, it's an interesting one. People see this differently. They've had 2 red cards now in the 5 games, both for double yellows as well at the same time. I'm going to be honest on cards on the table, not one iota from me. I just think it's brain dead. Any sympathy over the Trossard one at all?
No, don't do it. Especially if you're on a yellow card. I mean, you can try your luck a little bit and maybe, try, if you haven't got a yellow card, you can maybe try and get away with it, kicking the ball away. But to do when you're already on a yellow, when your teammates already done it as well in the season, and you know that refs are absolutely all over this one, it's just pure stupidity. I don't think they can have any complaints about that decision, to be honest. And I think, I've seen the suggestions that around the Doku one that, why wasn't that punished? But we've had it now clarified that is actually where the free kick should have been taken from. So that's where he was kicking the ball. So, total nonsense to compare those two. So and if anything, really, if anybody should feel aggrieved by a refereeing decision in that game, I actually think it should be Man City around the equalising goal that Arsenal scored. That was shambolic. It just so poor from the referee to drag someone out of position and then allow a quick free kick. You can't be doing that. And I would like to think that is something when they go back and review the game that the referee will be told about that was an error, because it really was, and it affected the game. I mean, still an incredible finish, but you just can't be doing that and leaving teams short-handed because you're having a word with the player. It just isn't right. He should have immediately called that one back. I think he just kind of lost himself a little bit in that moment. So yeah, that for me was probably the biggest refereeing gaffe in the entire game, to be honest.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, didn't we, about cards, and there was plenty given out yesterday. It looks like it's going to be one of those seasons, potentially. And I suppose we should, as much as we talk about refs, managers are being questioned. This is the bit, isn't it, when you get 5, 6 in, people start to look and go in, who's not got a win, who's under pressure, all those types of things. Is there any you're looking at thinking could just be on a sticky wicket in the wider Premier League?
I mean, it's not looking great for Everton, is it, for starters? I mean, but I still think, for me, I still think they'd be wrong to sack Dyche. I mean, he's been in situations like this before, and kind of, has got Burnley out of it several times. He's done it with Everton after bad starts as well. I still think he's a man who's proven so many times that he can manage a Premier League team to safety. And, this early in the season, it takes a couple of wins and all of a sudden you're in mid-table. So, it really isn't as desperate. And I think Everton's biggest risk, actually, of relegation for me would be if they sacked Dyche and made a bad appointment, like a kind of a Lampard again or whatever. I think that might actually take them down this time. And so they should be really wary about that one. But I think, I think obviously he's feeling pressure, but I still think it'd be silly. And then elsewhere, obviously, you look below them, Gary O'Neill is there. But again, he's done a decent job up to this point at Wolves, and I'm sure they will feel that the fortune and turn around. I think maybe the one who's under maybe most pressure is possibly, you look at Russell Martin at Southampton, and there's already kind of a little feeling building around him that, even though he dragged Southampton up in a season where they probably weren't expecting it, the feeling that his football is naive and it's not going to work out for them. Which, it seems a little harsh that if you buy into that, you accept it's how you're going to play, then, you come to the Premier League and expect him to do something totally different. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. And I actually, one more I want to mention is Lopetegui at West Ham United. And to be honest, I'm kind of quite enjoying that in a way, because I just think David Moyes is such an underrated football manager for the job he did there. And I thought I totally understand if West Ham wanted to go in a slightly different direction and do things differently, but you have to appoint a better manager than Lopetegui, who for me, CV wise, hasn't really done much that's better than Moyes. They both got a European trophy, and then he's failed at Real Madrid and failed at Spain, so maybe that makes him slightly more attractive. But I don't think the results are showing on the pitch that he's any better. I thought he was shocking against Chelsea at the weekend. So yeah, he's maybe one to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I can only assume Guillaume Balaguer is his agent after the piece he put out and the tweets around him for those types of things. Doesn't maybe quite match the reality, but yeah, it is interesting. In fact, Next two games are against teams who you maybe have question marks over the manager, isn't it? With Lopetegui, West Ham, the Carabao, and then Gary O'Neill. So it will be interesting to see how those teams react. But, ladies and gents, we are pretty much there. There's a million things going on with Liverpool. I'm sure we'll be talking more contract stuff. There'll be two games again to talk about, the Carabao and Wolves, by the next time we catch up. So all it leaves me to say as ever is, David, for the time and the insight, much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters Anfield Index.